At the Oscars, I'm going with the latter. It's the Oscars. Don't throw gum at your girlfriend, people. Come on, come on, we know this.
What are you gonna do? There's no cocktail napkin. Are you going to put it at the bottom of Oscar?
In the cheek, you got it.
You keep, wow.
Up next, The Arena with Kasie Hunt debuts right now.
Thanks so much for joining us.
It's President Trump versus the world order. Let's head into the arena. This hour, a weekend in Florida did not help. President Trump seething publicly and privately at Ukraine's president as top cabinet officials figure out next steps, including whether to pause U.S. funding for Kyiv. Plus, the about face from the face of HHS. RFK Jr. giving his latest stance on the measles vaccine amid a deadly outbreak, with a caveat. And new reporting debuting this hour inside the president's speech to Congress tomorrow, including his special guest. And the dilemma for Democrats. Senator Elizabeth Warren will be here live in the arena. Hi, everyone. I'm Kasie Hunt. Welcome to the arena. It's wonderful to have you with us on this Monday. And as we launch our new program, it feels as though the stakes for America and for the world have never been higher. And that is where we start today, with the fallout from President Trump's unprecedented showdown with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. New reporting just into CNN. Cabinet secretaries planning to meet this week to discuss the next steps on Ukraine, including the possibility of suspending military aid, as President Trump continues to seethe about what happened in the Oval Office on Friday.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
So in the days since then, the Europeans have scrambled to throw themselves behind Zelensky and to rearm Europe. Here in the U.S., there have been calls for Zelensky to resign. And the Kremlin spokesman has suggested that Donald Trump is reshaping the world in a way that, quote, largely coincides with our vision. He actually said that before that meeting unfolded at all. And you almost have to wonder if what did go down in the Oval on Friday gave President Trump an excuse to do what he's wanted to do all along. It also begs the question, what kind of leader does President Trump want to be? The leader of what we know as the free world, or of something new? Here's how the Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal editorial page put it over the weekend. They wrote this, quote, "It's clear that President Trump has designs for a new world order. Does he want deals with Russia and China to carve up the planet? He should tell Americans." In Ukraine, Zelensky told Ukrainians where he stands, saying that the end of their war with Russia is, quote, very, very far away. That prompted President Trump to fire back. He posted earlier today, quote, "America will not put up with it for much longer." And then the president had this to say at the White House just a short time ago.
I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe.
All of this, of course, raises the question of who will end up at the table negotiating the end of this war.
President Zelensky stood and fought for Ukraine, but Churchill was also voted out of office in 1945. He was a man for a moment, but he did not then transition England into the next phase. And it's unclear whether President Zelensky, particularly after what we saw Friday, is ready to transition to Ukraine to an end to this war and to negotiate and have to compromise.
And Trump's former national security advisor, the General H.R. McMaster, who has, of course, known Donald Trump incredibly well, had this warning.
Putin couldn't be happier. He appeals to President Trump's sense of aggrievement, right? Donald, like me, you've been treated so unfairly. And he's been very successful at it because he's a master manipulator and one of the best liars in the world. And he's being played like other presidents have been played, like other leaders have been played, through that same playbook of Putin's.
All right, our panel is here. Alex Thompson, national political correspondent at Axios and a CNN political analyst. CNN host Michael Smerconish. Ashley Allison, CNN political commentator, former White House senior policy advisor. And Patrick McHenry, who's, of course, the former Republican congressman and speaker pro tempore. Welcome to all of you. Thank you all very much for joining us on this first day in the arena. And I want to call you Mr. Speaker. I do want to start with you on what we've seen, the fallout from this be. And this big picture, I mean, the Wall Street Journal, obviously they are at odds with Trump, not infrequently, but they are also not a bunch of Democrats sitting around thinking about the world. And they had this very stark portrait of Donald Trump rewriting the world. And they go on to write about how it's really a return to, a type of power global politics, geopolitics that is pre-World War II. Is that what he's doing, and is that good for America?
Well, it's pre-Republican Party World War II. So this is not. This has points that the Republican base and the Republican coalition are familiar with, and there are divides within the Republican Party. For those of us that think we have a security imperative globally and a requirement upon us as the greatest nation on the planet, strongest economy on the globe, that we owe the world a stability and level of security. But that is not what the election was about. So let's rewind. This president campaigned on ending the war in Ukraine, having a new reset with Russia, taking the fight to China. He's talked about everything that his first couple of weeks in office have been about on tariffs and economic aggression, so we can get back a hold of our economy, and what's happening at the southern border. So all of this has been pre-election Trump comments and now fulfillment. So the question here is, why did the Ukrainian leadership not read the room and approach it differently and approach the Trump administration differently?
Michael Smerconish, do you think Zelensky made a fundamental mistake in how he handled it, or was it all set up from the beginning?
No. I think that J.D. Vance set him up, pushed his button, engaged, and then completely retreated, turned the table, and said, frankly, it reminded me of the scene in Animal House where when the fraternity is on trial at the end, Otter, I think, stands up and says, I'm not going to stick around while you badmouth the United States of America. Gentlemen. And they all march out. You're looking at me mystified. Did you ever watch Animal House? Because all 12 times that I watched it, I loved it.
I am not mystified by Animal House.
But the point is, he tried to turn the table, and a lot of people are buying into this and saying, I'm sitting here and you're bad-mouthing the U.S. Zelensky was doing nothing of the sort. Listen, I came of age as a Reagan Republican in the 80s. I like the fact that Ronald Reagan's portrait is now in the Oval Office. Ronald Reagan is rolling over in his grave. Lech Walesa was the Gdansk shipyard electrician in Poland in the 80s who became a champion and became the first Polish democratically elected president after the fall of the Soviet Union. He signed a letter today saying that he looked on with horror and distaste as he watched these events. That's how I feel.
But I can tell you that this Vance-Zelensky showdown has been brewing for months. That Zelensky in the final weeks of the election last year called Vance too radical in his proposals. And in some ways, Vance is actually even more anti-interventionist when it comes to this war than Trump himself is. And in the Senate, he was too. And his sort of small team that he brought over from the Senate, they were among the most anti-Ukraine or anti-interventionist part of the Senate offices for the last 2 years.
I think it's two ways. I don't disagree with you that the items you laid out in terms of what this election is about, those were, I would put the economy and the border higher than the Ukraine and Russia war in terms of what people were saying. But I think the impact of how he is handling it wasn't really litigated in the election, because for so long we were asking President Trump, candidate Trump then, where do you stand on Russia? Where will you stand up to Putin? And he never, and people like me who said, I think he's going to side with Russia I was saying, they were telling me that I wasn't being an honest broker on it. And now we see something like this. I also watch that meeting in the Oval Office and thought about it. He is the president of the United States. And as someone who has worked for a president and has sat in an Oval Office and briefed the president, you do not argue if you're on their team with it. But you do have a responsibility when you work for someone to brief them properly and give them every possible scenario. And I think the fact that Zelensky was not going to accept that J.D. Vance made a premise that he was not thankful and that Putin was being diplomatic, I don't think any world leader would let that actually stand.
So don't take the bait. Wouldn't that be the brief?
But didn't Trump take the bait?
Wouldn't that be the brief to President Zelensky? If you watch the 40 minutes of this, which is a long, grueling thing, it's absurd, right? For a press conference this long. But Zelensky was 10 minutes away from having a minerals deal and as close to as Zelensky could get from Trump security guarantees. 10 minutes away from guns, money, and the ability to go fight the fight so that you actually had a point of leverage. Instead, he took the bait from the vice president, and the vice president showed he has real capacity in this administration.
I think J.D. Vance should have been a bigger person and not played a game in the Oval Office with our ally.
I want to watch a little. We do have a little bit of J.D. Vance and Zelensky going back and forth, just to kind of bring everybody back into that moment, because it really is a remarkable one. Watch.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour.
He calls it a propaganda tour, Alex. One question I have here. I mean, there were reports that Joe Biden and Zelensky got into it a little bit at the end of the Biden administration. Is this just Zelensky as a person and then it explodes? Is this J.D. Vance recognizing that Zelensky kind of has a tendency to, lose his temper, maybe, if that's what happened, and he's poking that for his own ends?
I think both things can be true. Joe Biden, the Biden administration, felt that sometimes that Zelensky was ungrateful for the amount of aid that and basically just felt that they were asking for more and more and didn't always have a clear plan. But I can also tell you that the Trump team, even some of the people that are more sympathetic to Ukraine, think Zelensky completely misplayed this hand and basically set it up where now they're basically saying, like, you better get on TV and apologize.
Can I state the obvious? And I read the NBC report because it circulated this weekend about what happened with Joe Biden on the phone with Zelensky. It needs to be underscored. It was private.
Yes.
It was a private communication. It didn't play out on television like this.
And there wasn't a president at the end of the whole thing saying, "Oh, well, this is going to be great on television."
Yes.
100%. All right. Well, this actually does fit in with what we've been talking about here. Part of Donald Trump's worldview has led us to breaking news coming in from Wall Street. Look at this. Stocks plummeting today. President Trump confirmed just within the past hour that the U.S. will impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico beginning tomorrow. And the Dow falling more than 600 points on the news. The S&P posted its biggest loss since December. Patrick McHenry, Congressman, Speaker, what's your preferred title? Congressman, Speaker? Both?
Patrick. I'm free.
We do know that Donald Trump watches the markets. And he is putting these tariffs on. This historically has been, this kind of protectionist thing has not been what the Republican Party has stood for. Is President Trump going to continue with this kind of reaction coming in from it, or?
So the economy is the major question. How do people feel about the economy? And we have 2 years till the next election. So the president's going to take aggressive action economically to get the benefit by the next election or by the following election. So in the short term, yes, the barometer is the stock market to President Trump. That is clear. He telegraphs that and states that clearly. What he is doing with Canada and Mexico has less to do with Canada and Mexico and more to do with China. We are in a lone stance in the world, trying to reorient the world and reset the trading relationship with China. And without allies in this fight, some of us, I wish we had done this in the first Trump administration with building support in Europe and India and our trading partners that we're most closely tied to, and bring them along with us. And this is Trump's way of bringing them along, which is punishment until they come on Team USA.
Can I say that's a pretty sophisticated analysis, and you might be right. I tend to think it's about personalities. He doesn't like Justin Trudeau. The stated basis, migrants and fentanyl, really, to the extent that we have to impose a 25% tariff, it makes no sense. Americans can't understand tariffs, big picture, but they do understand the price of automobiles, vegetables, and T-shirts. This will come back to bite them if it lasts long.
All right, everybody stand by for us. Right now, I do want you all to tell me something that I don't know. To all my sources and friends around town, you know who you are. We're sending you email. Check your inboxes. Here's our question today. We've been talking about it. Was Zelensky's public confrontation with Trump worth it? Y'all have till the bottom of the hour. Do send thoughts, tips, exclusives. If this question is totally wrong, if I've been totally wrong, then tell us what is the right one. Viewers will let you in on this conversation coming up later on in the hour. But up next here, what RFK Jr. is now saying about the measles vaccine and where he's saying it. Plus, our one-on-one with Senator Elizabeth Warren, how she wants Democrats to respond to President Trump and what she's looking for in his speech to Congress tomorrow.